Unusual deaths in human history. The body of a 39-year-old man was discovered hanging upside down inside the leg of a papier-mâché stegosaurus. He crawled inside head first, trying to retrieve his phone, but got trapped, causing him to experience a slow, painful death. In 2019, a Sri Lankan man was trampled to death by a wild elephant after jumping out of his car and attempting to hypnotize it. In 2016, a 10-year-old boy named Caleb Schwab was decapitated when he was ejected from his ride on Verrucht, a 168-foot-tall water slide at Schlitterbahn Water Park. In late 2019, a family in Iowa was trying to make a viral gender reveal to announce the sex of their baby. The family proceeded to fill a steel umbrella stand with gunpowder, inadvertently making a pipe bomb, causing 56-year-old Pamela Kreimeier to be hit in the head with shrapnel, killing her instantly. In 2014, a 23-year-old Indian soccer player named Peter Biak Singh Zula scored a goal and did a somersault to celebrate. However, he landed awkwardly on his neck and died due to spinal cord injuries.
Derek Chauvin, the former Minneapolis police officer convicted of murdering George Floyd, was stabbed by another inmate and seriously injured Friday at a federal prison in Arizona. The attack happened at the Federal Correctional Institution, Tucson, a medium-security prison that has been plagued by security lapses and staffing shortages. The Bureau of Prisons confirmed that an incarcerated person was assaulted at FCI Tucson at around 12:30 p.m. local time Friday. In a statement, the agency said responding employees contained the incident and performed life-saving measures before the inmate, who it did not name, was taken to a hospital for further treatment and evaluation. It is also the second major incident at the Tucson Federal Prison in a little over a year. In November 2022, an inmate at the facility's low-security prison camp pulled out a gun and attempted to shoot a visitor in the head. 47-year-old Derek Chauvin was sent to FCI Tucson from a maximum security Minnesota State Prison in August 2022 to simultaneously serve a 21-year federal sentence for violating Floyd's civil rights and a 22-year state sentence for second-degree murder.
1. To Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital, falsely imprisoned Maya Kowalski without legal authority under circumstances that were unreasonable and unwarranted between October 7th and October 13th, 2016. Yes.
This teacher slept with an 11-year-old and then gave him a Friends with Benefits bracelet. 42-year-old Allison Kranick, who worked at a school in Connecticut, has been accused of having a sexual relationship with an 11-year-old boy. The boy said that Allison forced him to sleep with her multiple times, and many of those times were in her car. They first communicated through iMessage and Snapchat, but then changed it up and moved the conversation to Discord when Allison found out that the child's parents monitored those apps on his phone. The boy also said that he snuck out of his house at least 14 times at 1 a.m. and 2 a.m. to meet Allison. She then made the boy a beaded bracelet with the acronym BFFLWB, which stood for Best Friends for Life with Benefits. And then Allison told the boy not to tell anyone she gave him the bracelet, and if someone asked, to tell them that it meant best friends forever for life or better. After 2 months of this going on, the boy ended the relationship and eventually told his family. And by the way, Allison is also married and has 2 young children of her own. She was charged and is being held on a $500,000 bond.
The 13-year-old honor student's son kills mom, stabbing her multiple times in the neck, and then leaves his 14-day-old little sister alive.
Case is absolutely baffling. We have no idea what the motive is. This is about 11:30 at night. The son, as you said, 13 years old, is awake. Both the baby and mom are asleep. He goes into the bedroom, allegedly stabs mom to death, like I said, leaves the baby untouched, and then he takes the pictures, sends it to someone he barely even knows. I mean, he says the word friend in the 911 call, and when the dispatcher asks for a name, He says he doesn't know the friend's actual name. It's just someone that he plays games with online.
This haunting security footage went viral after the death of social media influencer Mia Starr. It shows a masked man captured on CCTV moments before he burst into Mia's room while she was live streaming and murdered her in cold blood. And this was just before Mia was set to host a popular award show, which was by no surprise canceled due to her untimely death. And while an arrest for the crime has been made, case files suggest that authorities may have got the wrong guy. And many speculate that Mia's boyfriend Luke might be the man responsible. The case has since been reopened, and now you can help solve the mystery of who killed Mia. This murder mystery game is an absolute must for true crime fans. And what I like most about it is that it has both physical and digital elements to the game, which makes it feel like you're solving a real-life case. There are top secret files you can sort through, and at one point in the game, you can actually use your device to hack into Mia's phone. And if you want to check it out, they have it at Walmart, Amazon, Target, and of course,
Controversial YouTube momfluencer Ruby Frankie has been arrested for child abuse. Ruby ran a popular YouTube page called 8 Passengers that followed her Mormon family's day-to-day life. Her harsh parenting style, like making her son sleep on a beanbag for months, letting her daughter go hungry, and taking all of her kids' belongings and making them pay to get them back, earned her more than a few critics. The page went dark in 2022, but last month, Ruby and her business partner Jody were arrested for aggravated child abuse. Cops had been called about a child in distress and said that Ruby's 12-year-old son had escaped out of a window starving and ran to a neighbor for help. He and his 10-year-old sister had duct tape on their ankles and their wrists, had open wounds from apparent restraints, and were so malnourished they needed to be hospitalized. All 4 of Ruby Frankie's minor children are now in the care of Child Protective Services, and her husband Kevin, their father, claims he had no idea about the alleged abuse.
This woman jumped off a top-floor balcony to escape her jealous boyfriend. 28-year-old Amy Beckley had been dating 28-year-old footballer Shaquille McDonald for about 6 weeks. Shaquille played professional football for clubs such as Derby County and Coventry. She said that in the first few weeks of them dating, he love-bombed her and showered her with affection. She was a single mum and really appreciated having someone looking after her and caring for her. However, she saw a completely different side to him when they were on a night out in March 2023. They'd been out in Arcadian in Birmingham when he accused her of speaking to a bouncer. He snatched her phone and keys and called her derogatory names and made her get in a taxi with him. In the taxi, he put her in a headlock, bit her, scratched her, and slapped her. After they got home, CCTV captured him launching another vicious attack at her. He smashed her into a concrete wall, dragged her inside, and strangled her repeatedly. She lost consciousness and he left the room, and when she came to, she tried to ring 999 on silent. However, she became so terrified of him that she jumped 14 foot from her top floor balcony to escape him. She broke both arms in doing so. Now, luckily her fall was broken slightly by a balcony below hers, and someone had been outside having a cigarette at the time. They helped her inside and got her some help. Police arrived and Shaquille tried to flee but was detained. Amy was in an absolutely horrific state. You can see the images on Google if you want to go and look at those, but they are really shocking. Shaquille was jailed for just 2 years and 8 months after admitting to actual bodily harm and strangulation.
This is maybe the scariest urban legend I've ever heard, and it ended up being true. Back in the 1970s, there was this terrifying fun house in Long Beach, California called The Laugh in the Dark. And there was always this urban legend that all the mannequins inside were fake, except for one. Also, mind you, this is what this week's episode is about, so if you don't want spoilers, just listen to the episode. This urban legend came to be because there was one mannequin inside that just looked wrong. All of the other ones looked fake, but this one in particular looked way too human. And a bunch of the kids also said the area that the mannequin was in just smelled really, really bad. So a few years go by, and one day a film crew comes in and is using Laugh in the Dark for a film set. The director's lining up a shot, and he just doesn't like the way this one mannequin looks in frame. So he goes over to a crew member and he's like, hey, can you just move this out of the shot? So the crew member goes over and starts moving the mannequin when its arm pops off. And inside of the mannequin's arm is human bone. The kids had been totally right. The mannequin was a mummified body. There's so much more to this story, like who the person was and how they got there, and I talk about the whole thing this week on the episode.
On September 23, 2023, The life of 22-year-old Jonathan Martinez was tragically cut short in a heartbreaking and senseless act of violence in San Antonio, Texas. The events that unfolded on that fateful night would forever leave a mark on his family, friends, and the entire community. Jonathan, a promising young man who had achieved much at his young age, was visiting his partner in her apartment. The man responsible for this tragedy, Gustavo Garrido Jr., had been involved with Jonathan's partner in the past. Despite their breakup in July 2023, Garrido couldn't let go and continued to pursue her. On that September 23rd night, as Jonathan and his partner were in her apartment, they began receiving ominous phone calls from an unknown number that left the young woman understandably concerned. When she finally answered, it was Garrido on the other end, making chilling threats to visit the apartment and harm both her and Jonathan. Not long after the ominous phone call, Garrido arrived at the apartment complex, parking his truck nearby. He then scaled the fence, forcibly entering the apartment. What followed was a horrifying confrontation in the living room. Garrido pushed the woman to the ground and fired 3 shots at Jonathan. Garrido then fled the scene. The authorities were alerted, and the search for Garrido began. 2 days later, he was arrested and taken into custody. Garrido was charged with murder, and his bond was set at $200,000. However, he was able to post bail and be released on bond within days of being captured. Jonathan's untimely death has left an indelible void in the lives of those who knew him. He was a dedicated, responsible, and beloved individual. Jonathan was a certified combo welder, but at the time worked for a construction company doing cement work, something he enjoyed doing. The family, alongside the community, is united in their quest for justice in memory of Jonathan. They yearn for the day when the legal system can provide closure. However, no court verdict will ever replace the void left by his tragic departure. In the face of their immense loss, they stand strong, bonded together by their love for Jonathan and their unwavering demand for justice. Gustavo Garrido's pretrial date is set for October 31st, 2023, in San Antonio, Texas.
We need to talk about one of the worst accidents that ever happened on a horror film set, because I don't really see this moment talked about much. So this accident happened on the set of The Exorcist, which is already a movie that plenty of people think was cursed, hence why I did a whole episode about it. But in the movie, Linda Blair plays this little girl named Reagan who was possessed by a demon. And the way that the film shows you that she's possessed are by these contraptions that they built for her. This is one that makes her levitate, but there was also this one that made her thrash around. To use this device, Linda had to be sewn into a plank, that way her back was supported while it was thrashing around. And mind you, the people controlling this device were adult men, and Linda was a child. So during one take, Linda actually became untethered from this device, meaning that her back was no longer supported. And you can see it in this take, but watch as she starts crying after the director calls cut. That's because Linda had just broken her spine. The director and the other adults in the room all thought that she was acting up a storm when in fact her screams and cries were from her spine being fractured. Anyways, that's only one of the many wild things that happened on this set, so check out the episode for more.
On June 24, 1993, 14-year-old Jennifer Lee Ertman and 16-year-old Elizabeth Christine Pena were brutally attacked and murdered by a gang in Houston, Texas. The girls were walking home from a pool party and took a shortcut along railroad tracks, where they encountered 6 gang members, including Peter Cantu, Jose Medellin, Derek O'Brien, Efrain Perez, Raul Villarreal, and Venancio Medellin. The gang members had just initiated Villarreal into their gang after a violent ceremony. When the girls passed by, they were assaulted and sexually assaulted by the gang members for over an hour. Realizing that the girls would be capable of identifying them, Cantu ordered the members to kill the girls. He told Venancio Medellin to stay behind because he was too little to watch. The other gang members forced the girls into a wooded area. As Ertman was murdered, Pena was forced to watch her friend's death as other gang members held a ligature around her neck. At first, Pena desperately attempted to appease her abusers as she wept, offering her phone number so they could get together. She then attempted to flee. In response, Cantu tackled and repeatedly kicked the girl in her face and body, dislodging 3 teeth and fracturing several ribs. Both girls were then strangled to death. After the murders, the gang members divided the stolen valuables and bragged about their crimes. The perpetrators were arrested, and Cantu, Jose Medellin, O'Brien, Perez, and Villarreal were sentenced to death. Later, due to a Supreme Court ruling banning executions for crimes committed by individuals under 18, Perez and Villarreal had their death sentences commuted to life in prison. O'Brien was executed in 2006, while Jose Medellin was executed in 2008. Cantu was executed in 2010. Venancio Medellin, who testified against the others, received a 40-year prison sentence for his involvement. He is scheduled for release in 2034.
Normal-looking photos that have a disturbing backstory, Part 28. While this appears to be a book with typical wear and tear, the damage at the bottom is from a bullet hole. The math book belongs to 10-year-old Uzziah Garcia, who along with 18 other students died in the Robb Elementary School shooting that occurred just a few months ago. This mirror selfie shows Giovanni Bezerra, a Brazilian anesthetist, who was arrested after assaulting a pregnant woman during her C-section. He heavily sedated her and placed his private part in her mouth for 10 minutes, and is seen in a hidden camera wiping her face with gauze after he was done. This photo shows a group of US airmen who were taken as prisoners of war by Japanese soldiers in 1945. 8 of the 11 men were dissected while they were still alive, and the 3 others were placed in custody. This photo shows Michael and Susan Kuhnhausen after being married for 18 years. In 2006, Michael hired a hitman to kill his wife. However, Susan choked the man with her bare hand, saying, "Tell me who sent you here, and I'll call you an ambulance."
This is Ghost Rider 2.0, one of the worst cartel execution videos ever explained. Just like the Ghost Rider cartel video, this video is extremely hard to watch. The video is kinda short, lasting only 1 minute and 35 seconds, and as you play the video, you see a man with his hands tied behind his back, and he is sitting on the ground wearing jeans and a blue shirt. His head is bleeding and it's clear he got multiple injuries off camera. Multiple men can be heard in the background and one of them seems to be interrogating the victim. As the victim is being interrogated, another man pulls the rope around his wrist, making sure it's tight. And for whatever reason, they place a hat on the victim's head. The leading theory is that it represents some gang which maybe the victim is part of. They then smack the victim around for a couple seconds, then another man enters the shot carrying a log that was recently in a fire. The log is smoking and smoldering, but it's not on fire. You see the hot charcoal glowing at the end of the log. The man then gets the log and places the hot end against the victim's chest, which makes the victim let out a terrifying scream. The victim then rolls around on the ground trying to get away from the man, but he then places the hot log against his back, and again causing the victim to scream horribly. The video then jump cuts and it shows the man pinning the victim down with the log by pushing it into the back of his neck. This immobilizes the victim as he's forced to take the unbearable heat of the log. At this point, you see the victim's jeans have been stripped and you see the skin around his thighs peeling off. This is due to the severe burning done off camera. The victim continues rolling around, but when he turns over on his back, he is then burned with the log on the side of his neck. They stop burning the victim for a couple seconds and he then sits up. Then, another man pours a clear liquid over his head, completely soaking his hair, clothes, and face. The other man then places the red-hot log between his legs, burning his exposed genitals. And this is where things take a turn for the worst. The video then jump cuts again, and it shows the awful sight of the victim's head being set on fire as well as his genitals. The fire completely engulfed the victim's head, face, and shoulders. Though he is still alive rolling around on the ground, which is why people refer to this video as Ghost Rider 2.0. As the video continues, the men insult the victim as he's on fire. The video ends as the victim is still alive rolling around on the ground, but he has stopped screaming at this point. This could be due to his damaged vocal cords from the fire. There's no reports about the victim's fate, but it's safe to assume they ended up killing him. This video and case is absolutely horrific, and it's just sad and scary that stuff like this happens daily to people. Take this warning and never go searching for this video because it's absolutely horrible.
A man did the unthinkable to a hospitalised child in Blackburn. It was the 15th of May 1948 in Lancashire. June Ann Devaney was just 3 years old when she was admitted to Queen's Park Hospital in Blackburn with pneumonia. She was under the care of nurse Gwendolyn Humphreys on the night in question. Now, little June had actually improved quite a lot and she was due to be discharged the next morning. Then, disturbingly, at around 1:20 a.m, while the nurse was preparing things in the back room, she felt a cold draft and noticed a door open. She went to see what was going on and was horrified when she saw one of the cots was empty. She then noticed something terrifying, a trail of adult footprints leading to the door. The nurse raised the alarm and contacted police. At 3:17 a.m, tragically they found the little child's body. She was face down in the grass not far from the ward. She was partially clothed with bloodstains on her body. The hospital immediately became a crime scene and a murder investigation began. The post-mortem found that the child had been AR'd and had teeth marks in her. A taxi driver reported to police that he had picked up a man with a local accent close to the hospital on the night of the crime. Now, the killer's fingerprints were actually found on a bottle next to June's cot. Over 46,000 sets of prints were tested against these until finally a match. The killer was Peter Griffiths, who eventually confessed. He pleaded guilty due to insanity and said he was drunk at the time and killed June in a fit of rage. He was found guilty of the crime and sentenced to death and was executed aged 22.
Yeah, why don't you just sit down there?
You have to kick him inside the room. We don't care. I don't care. My parents are here. I can't come. I just want to help this camera. He used to live here, so he can tap into anything. But we have cameras up for other reasons.
Right, I got you. You know he's in there for a fact?
I know for a fact.
You can kick your door. You can kick it in.
I swear to God, go ahead. Please. I don't know what's wrong with this girl.
Oh, there's a girl in there with him?
Yes, I told them this. I told them this. There's a girl in there. She's very small and slim. My husband said he didn't really get a good look at her, but he's yelling at her. Shut the f*** up before I beat the living her face. She can't see out of her eyes.
Okay.
So this is why I'm nervous. This is why I've been calling him all morning, and I don't even know if that's even the right thing to do.
You know 100%.
I know 100%.
How long ago did they go in there?
We don't know when he got in there, but
This 60-year-old grandfather was murdered while playing Pokemon Go by an armed security guard. So this is Jiansheng Cheng. He was a grandfather who lived in Virginia, and he used to play Pokemon Go with his family members to connect with them. His family members said he played this game exclusively to get closer to members of his family and spend time with them. So on the night of January 26, 2017, Jiansheng was driving through a neighborhood, and he entered private property which belonged to a community clubhouse. 10 days earlier, he had been cited for trespassing on this private property, but on that evening, for some reason, he drove back in search of Pokemon. So that night, recognizing the same blue van, Jonathan Cromwell, an armed security guard, approached the grandfather. So according to the investigation, Jiansheng was in the parking lot of the clubhouse when Jonathan noticed him and stopped his vehicle directly in front of Jiansheng's. Jiansheng's car was effectively blocked in. He then put his car in reverse, turned his vehicle around so that it was in the entrance of the parking lot, so he was about to leave. And that's when Jonathan Cromwell, for some reason, exited his vehicle, screamed out stop, and then for some reason pulled out his weapon and fired 10 shots at the car. For some reason, Jonathan fired several rounds through the side window of the van and then went to the windshield and fired directly at Jiansheng through the windshield. The grandfather was hit 5 different times and died on scene. Now, this was tragic news for the community, and people saw this shooting as totally unneeded and unwarranted. But when they'd learn the full truth of the situation, people would get pissed. So Jonathan had lied and said that Jiansheng tried to ram him with his vehicle, which didn't happen. And he was originally charged with second-degree murder, but after new information came out, this charge was upgraded to first-degree murder. You see, Jonathan had a pretty disturbing history working as an armed security guard. In the past, he had drawn and brandished his weapon at people who were members of the clubhouse, guests of the Riverwalk neighborhood, and unarmed civilians, and he was known to go beyond the boundaries of his duties and use excessive force. This use of excessive force had actually gotten him fired from an employer in the past as well. So eventually, in 2019, Jonathan Cromwell was found guilty of murder and he was sentenced to 30 years in prison. This crime was just so unnecessary, and it's so shocking because a grandfather was literally murdered while playing a children's game that he loved playing with his kids.
You should never go to Chuck E. Cheese, and here is why. One day, this little boy went to Chuck E. Cheese with his family. He was having his 7th birthday party, so we invited some friends over too. But little did these guys know that they would have such a horrible time and they would never want to come back. You see, everything was going pretty smoothly until Chucky came. Typically at every Chuck E. Cheese birthday party, Chucky will come out with his Chucky suit. However, this time, Chucky wasn't who everyone thought he was. As they were celebrating the little boy's birthday, the parents had to step outside for a business call. But they made the biggest mistake of leaving their kids alone with Chucky. And thinking everything was normal, the kids started to play with Chucky. But Chucky then did something that made the kids run outside and never come back in again. If you want to know what Chucky really did, hit the plus for part 2.